I can't help but smile when I hear that sound because it means we are in for another episode of the Rec Poker Podcast. And if I'm hosting, that usually means it's the forums edition. So we are going to take a look in the Rec Poker forums, and we're going to talk about it here with the panel. So first, I'd like to thank website AMP and Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino for making all this possible. I'm your host, Jim Reed. Bluffsterini in the home game. And if you want to find out about me and the rest of the Wrecking Crew, you can go to rec.poker/crew. But I am just one man, and I am here joined by a panel of recreational poker players and wizards. Wizards, why don't you introduce yourself?
I am John Somsky, and I am Poker Geek MN everywhere.
My name is Woody Adams, and I play as Rocketbox on PokerStars Pennsylvania and Rocketbox Poker on the home game that we play together. If you want to reach out to me, you can find me on Twitter at Woody Adams.
And Woody's one of our Wrecking Crew members, and he's been putting great stuff in the forums. He's been helping people get to know poker and find their love for poker. He's playing in the seminars. It was time to have him back on the show and get his perspective on what some folks are putting in the forums here. So like I say, I've got the best job in the world. I get to just hang out here with recreational poker players. Just like every week, we're in the nightly home game trying to steal each other's chips. And just like every week, we will take a forum post from rec.poker. This one's by Jacob Kiki, one of our father-son combos. There's a bunch of tag team players in our home games, whether it's fathers and son, siblings, husbands and wives. There's a lot of great collaborators. Jacob is one of them, along with his dad. So here he's playing in the Canterbury $150 deep stack, and was curious about how people would have played this hand. So there's 200 entries in the tournament, 33 left, and 21 get paid. The blinds are 2K, 4K with a 4K ante, and we have about 18 big blinds. Pre-flop, it's seven-handed. The table's gotten significantly harder, and I don't think there's an obvious bad player at the table. So I don't think I have a significant edge over anyone at my table. And that's a great note to be taking, because we talk on the show all the time about when to avoid variance and when to embrace variance. And if you feel like you have a skill edge on the table, maybe you want to avoid variance a little bit. But if you feel like everyone on the table is a killer, you shouldn't be afraid to take a flip. And a flip, not a negative EV decision, but you shouldn't be afraid to invite some variance into your play. In this case, we are in the big blind with ace of diamonds, two of spades. The action's folded to the small blind, who has about 32 big blinds, so covers us very comfortably. They raise to 12.5 off a four big blind, which is large, as it should be when the small blind opens. And they've been playing together since the beginning of the tournament. They seem solid, haven't seen a bluff all day. We've only had two other blind versus blind situations, and he raised each time, and it was about the same size. So we've got ace-2 offsuit. What should I do here, says Jacob. Should I call? I feel like my ace high is ahead of a lot of his range, blind versus blind. Should I jam? It's a 17 big blind jam, and it would be hard to call for the small blind, being over half their stack. I wasn't sure if ace-2 offsuit is a good jam coming close to the money, or should I fold and find a better spot where I can apply the pressure in a different situation? I elected to call.
Well, let's jump.
Yeah, let's just talk about that right there for a second. So
there's a lot to go over there with pre-flop and
why don't you get started? Yeah, what jumps out at you?
First off is that I think this is a difficult spot that Jacob is facing here, and it merits some good discussion. So I'm really glad that he wrote the post. It's really he mentioned something at the beginning that it's not that great of a hand. Dude, this is a great hand. this hand comes up all the time, and we're all kind of in the same spot where, it's almost like the hand is too good to fold, but at the same time, you really don't want to get called off, right? So it's a weird spot, but I really think that it's when it comes down to like if you were just if our bodies and our minds were only functioning as push or fold, I lean on a push with this particular type of holding. There are other options, and I think we can dissect some of those other options or unpack them a little bit. Um, but That's like between the two of them. I don't think I think that call is the least favorite of my decisions with this one, and fold is definitely reasonable or push, but I just don't think that the one in the middle is gonna do it for
Hmm.
you.
Yeah.
John, what did I don't know if that's I don't know
Mhm.
like that's kind of an aggressive angle at it for sure. Like taking an AC doozy, kind of loosey. You know, that's what they say in New York.
That's right. What do you
So
think, John?
Well, it reminds me of what Andrew Broca says, that a call is not a compromise between raise or fold.
Read my mind.
You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
so it's if this were suited, I'd be much more willing to play it with a call, because you have much more post flop playability with the suited hand than you do without the suited hand, particularly a suited ace. Whereas here, you really want to get rid of, if you can win it pre-flop, that's great for you. And raising out of the blinds can look strong, so that wouldn't be a bad course there.
the other thing that I picked up on in this first like paragraph that Jacob was writing is that this particular opponent he's been sitting with for hours, and he's only had these small blind versus big blind spot come up, what, two or three other times, but each time the player did the same thing, raised 3.5 big blinds, and presumably Jacob called along or flatted. He didn't mention anything about like taking an aggressive playback or that. Either he flatted or he folded, but one way or the other, you're allowing a player. We talk about like GTO versus exploitative play, and like this is definitely an exploitative play by the small blind, where they're seeing a weakness in our play, in our big blind defense, and they're not seeing enough raises out of us. They're not seeing enough folds out of us. They see like calls out of us, and you could take a pot if someone's just gonna take a call, fold line. You can take a pot that way. So I feel like small blind has like um, a very wide range here that he's trying to exploit our tendency to call along and fold after a couple big bets.
Yeah, and I think one of the nice things and we're talking about jamming again. Um, it's one of those situations where you're holding a blocker. You're never going to be in great shape when your opponent does call, but he's not likely to call very often, and that the frequency with which he folds is where you make a lot of your profit in a spot like this. The nice thing about doing with a hand like ace two is not only do you have the ace blocker, but there's a good chance that you're going to get a better hand than yours to fold, which is like some of those lower
Like
aces, like
ace-7.
ace. Yeah, exactly. Some of those
Yeah,
garbage
right.
aces, they might actually fold that. Whereas if you do this with a hand like ace eight or ace nine, you've still got the blocker, but maybe you have enough equity to call in a spot like that. But also when you do jam, they're never actually folding better. They're usually only folding worse. So it's that spot that I like the way you said that, John, about how calling isn't a compromise in Andrew Brooks's conversation. And it also just sets up the situation where when they do call, unfortunately, they are really ahead. One thing I wanted to jump on was Jacob mentions that they're getting close to the money, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're actually that close to the money. Like, I know it feels like they're close to the money. There was 200 entries, 21 get paid, and we're down to 33 or something like that. Let me make sure.
That's right. Yeah.
33 get paid and 33 left and 21 get paid. So I know it's only 12 people. That feels like not a lot of people, but relative to the size of the field, you're not really bubbling. with 12 people to go. So it's true that you should be thinking about not busting, but this isn't the kind of situation where you're 4 or 5 from the money, and ICM pressure is really, really, really a hugely high factor. You're not really as close as you think, I don't think.
That's a really good point. So at this point in the tournament, although it does feel like we've knocked out a lot of people and a lot of people are gone, for sure, but there's still 12 players left that are going to need to go before we're even close to the money, that we're even in the money, right? So effectively, we have to be making like positive chip EV decisions here. We need to be thinking more about, gaining and acquiring chips rather than thinking about chip preservation at this point. I think he started out with 16 and a half big blinds or something like that, right?
I think it was like 18 pre-flop and then
18
and then one big blind and then whatever 2.5 more. So he's got like
it just goes
15 back or something. Yeah.
It just like begs to be a shove. It just begs to be a shove right here.
Yeah.
So that's because you can maximize your fold equity.
Yeah.
That's I want to be clear on that. You're shoving with the hope that your opponent just folds, ace 9.
Well, and because he mentioned that this is the third time this situation has come up, and he's folded the previous 2.
Mm-hmm.
I would think the villain would be more likely to give him credit, particularly in a live game.
Yeah.
In an online game, I don't think you can count on that because they may not have noticed. But in a live game, it's much more likely they will have noticed, and they will give you credit this time.
Yeah,
I think that's really good factor, and I think that maybe like during this conversation, we should take a minute or two to talk about differences and similarities between live and online poker, especially as people are transitioning back from a year of online play back into live play. I think that we ought to, at some point in this discussion, we ought to hit that up.
Yeah, let's after our little Jonathan Little break, we can talk about some post flop stuff and some of those differences. So the last thing I want to talk, Chris Jones makes a great post in here. He also prefers the jam pre-flop. This is our membership content director, Chris Jones, who knows exactly what he's talking about, of course. And he just says, at this stack depth, we have a great candidate to incorporate into our jamming range. We block some of the best holdings, and we can get a lot of hands with great equity to fold. We're also not quite close enough to the bubble to knit it up and try to cash. I'd be jamming most of my ace-X offsuit combos here, my weaker pairs, plus a few of my best ace-X suited combos. I'm flatting with my premiums, my lower ace-X suiteds, most of my Broadways, and most of my suited combos. So he is flatting with a pretty wide and robust range as well. So he's just like continuing.
John was saying too. John was saying about like the suited wheel ace. You'd be more inclined to flat with that because it does have more playability post.
Right.
Yeah. And then Chris actually includes a Floptimal range output. And again, I always tell people you should go to rec.poker, get a free account, and just join the forums yourself, because there's so much detail and graphics and screenshots and ranges and stuff that people upload into the forums here. I can't quite do them justice by just talking about them on the air. So I encourage everyone to go and see. There's this beautifully laid out visual guide for exactly what 20 big blinds should be doing in that spot. And it's for people that like to learn visually, it's really helpful to be able to get that kind of input. So consensus is we like it as a jam pre-flop, I think, given the dynamic, the stage of the tournament, the hand quality, the stack size. Okay, so let's hear from our friend Jonathan Little, and then we'll dive in on the back end.
Ever wondered whether you should call a pre-flop raise or 3-bet instead? What do you do when you have a flush draw? Do you raise it, or do you just call? What do you do with ace-king when you miss the flop? Are you tired of guessing about what the right play is with your particular hand? Well, my name is Jonathan Little, and I am a 2-time World Poker Tour champion and creator of PokerCoaching.com, where we offer over 1,000 interactive hand quizzes where you play a hand and then get real-time feedback from our world-class pros. Don't guess and don't stress. Just register for your free account at PokerCoaching.com/RecPoker right now.
And I've said this before, if he catches out that you've been guessing or stressing, there is going to be trouble. Jonathan Little will hunt you down and make you pay. So don't guess, don't stress. Go to pokercoaching.com/recpoker and try it out today. So Woody, why don't we talk a little bit about, as you say, kind of how you might play this differently if it was live or online. I know people that have been used to playing live, maybe they've played a little more online over the last year or so, but we're all getting back to live now. How would that affect how you might approach it?
Oh, it's a great question, and it's probably something that I am gonna need to, get your advice on, both of your advice, to be honest with you, because it's like I'm not playing live just yet. I will be playing live probably within the next few weeks down at the Baltimore Casino in Maryland.
Nice.
But we'll be really aggressive. Like, we'll be really aggressive is what's going to happen. So
yeah, I think we get
in selective spots, But like, one of the things that I noticed that's different about online play versus live play is the bet raising size, like the opening size. So when you're playing online, you can open to 2.2 or 2.7 big blinds, and you get folds,
right.
And then you get like one call. Right. And it's a playable strategy. But when you're playing live, you can open to 2.2 or 2.5 big blinds, and the whole table will call you. Yeah, it's really wild. So then you have to modify not necessarily how much you're betting, but how frequently you're betting. You must differentiate like yourself from one of the other players at the table by either betting less in when you're only in position, like late, right? Or by, finding the 3-bet where other people just don't. Find that 3-bet where you see somebody's coming in for a 3 big blind bet, and you have 2 or 3 other players, flat behind, and you're on the cutoff with a hand. As long as they give you 2 cards, like, it's not necessarily a bad idea to put a raise in.
Yeah. Well, and I think when you're live too, people don't like busting.
Yeah.
Live a lot more than they don't like busting online. If you bust online, go take a walk around the living room, fire up another tournament. You're probably multi-tabling already. It's no big deal. When you bust live, you're getting in the car and driving home, and that's no fun. So I think while people don't respect like the small bets and raises as much, I think people really do kind of overfold to jams and stuff live. So there's that kind of, you can get it from both sides a bit. And I think also people are just kind of, I think you kind of said it earlier, like they're feeling it more. It's more of like the experience of playing. I think when you're playing online, people can't help but be a little more objective or cold, or I don't know, but you also just don't mind losing as much. Yeah, it's true.
Well, there's a big difference. I mean, playing live poker is a much more social game than playing online poker is. You actually get to see people. You've made a bigger commitment. You've had to drive somewhere. You didn't just fall out of bed. Maybe you're still wearing your underwear, signing on to the poker tables, right? So there's.
This is only from here up, right? Just for the record.
Yeah.
Woo! All right. Woo! That was good.
So it's a bigger commitment to play live, and people don't want to. They came to have fun. So that's why, particularly in cash games, the opening raise sizes are much larger.
Yeah.
You have to, do like 4x or 5x often in order to end up playing either heads up or with 2 other players. Versus online, you can do, like what he was saying, the 2.2x or 2.5x raises. You might go a little larger in a cash game, a little less in tournament sometimes. But so there's a difference. You can also, variance takes a lot longer to wear itself out in a live game. So you have to be a little bit more careful that if someone, 3 bets 3 hands in a row, it's possible to get good hands 3 hands in a row, right? Yeah. So you don't know for sure if they're truly doing 100% VPIP, or is this just their, randomization there to get the good hands in.
You touched on something there that I want to go on, which was the fact that a lot like live players they're like everybody coming out to have a good time. They're coming out to play some
Yep.
cards. They're coming out to play some poker. They're not there to fold, right?
They're
So
not
like
there to fold.
right, like a lot of people are playing a lot of pots. A lot of people are seeing a lot of flops, and a lot of people are folding on a lot of turns,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So like you gotta pick your spots. But when you do find that spot, don't be afraid to be aggressive on 3 streets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Hey,
don't shy away from taking that role in the
yes.
hand where you are the one that's going to win the pot.
I like that. Hey, just tangent. You're making that Rocket Box hat look good. Does that have Rec Poker on the back of it?
Yeah.
Let's spin that baby around to get that personalized. Look at that. Yes. Look at that. Beauty. I love it.
Yeah.
Look at that. Beautiful Rocket Box. Now we
Yeah.
just got to get you some of those pins on there so you can look cool like John, who's been kicking
Yeah.
butt.
Well, I could show this too.
Oh,
You got poker. You got poker. You
yes,
get
yes.
M.
Yep.
Yeah,
Nice, dude.
I love it.
That's
I am
great.
Poker Geek MN everywhere.
It is everywhere.
That's funny. It's doing on his hat.
Oh man, I gotta get mine personalized. I'm just boring old Jim. All right. Well, we managed to find a couple rabbit holes here. We should talk about so what ended up happening was Jacob called, and we got to the flop. We should talk about the post flop play here a little. Flop comes King of Clubs, 4 of Diamonds, 5 of Diamonds. We've got the Ace of Diamonds and the 2 of Spades. So we've got the backdoor flush draw and a straight draw. Gut shot here right off the bat. The villain bets a down bet of 2.5 big blinds, and we're not sure if we should call or fold or jam at this point. They elect to call. Turn comes to
wait.
7. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough.
So like right there is another opportunity to take the aggressive line and get the chips in the middle with the ace high, the backdoor nut flush draw, the inside straight draw. Like you got stuff, you got equity. As long as you got like more than 10% against aces, right? You're gonna be all right. Like you want to see 5 cards. You don't, and even if this guy's got a king, you still got equity. You know, I don't. And if he has one of these other cards that fell out, like he has a 4, he's folding. Like if he's got pocket 6s, he's folding. You know, it's like this is just a spot that if you find yourself in this position, this is a great flop for your junky hands. You know what I mean? Like this is a great board for ace 2s. If you don't know like what to do on this flop, then you need to shove. The answer is shove.
Well, and it is. I think the one really important point is that you do have a lot of kind of non-obvious equity here with the gut shot, ace high, the backdoor flush to the nuts. So it is, you've got a little more equity than you might think in this spot. And I think the only thing you shouldn't do, because the bet is so small, the only thing you shouldn't do is fold. Given those odds, even though it's a portion of your stack, it's not a great flop for you. But when the bet's that small and you're in position, I don't mind the call or the shove. I probably play it like a shove because I'm allergic to not getting my chips in the middle. I found out recently. I was diagnosed, but yeah, it's rough. But yeah. So John, do you want to add to that or?
No, I think that pretty much summarizes it. This is a great spot. You've got the gut shot draw that will make you the nuts at this point in time. So you're definitely not drawing dead.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a great time to take this hand away.
Yeah.
This would be so this is just like if you're not shoving this hand pre-flop, if you find yourself in this position post-flop, but like in my opinion, the shove pre-flop is going to get more folds and like win you more pots than not.
And
I guess another way to look at it is with ace deuce offsuit, what flops are you looking for?
John, you're
Yeah.
always just one step ahead of me, man. That's
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. And you're not going to flop much better than this.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. So if you're going to call pre-flop, it's with the intention of getting frisky on flops like this. If you're not going to take an aggressive action on flops like this, then as Jacob says
Yeah.
in the beginning, maybe they should just fold
Just fold.
and pick a better spot where you can leverage your stack more effectively. Because
And that's absolutely reasonable. Absolutely reasonable to take the fold pre line.
Yeah.
That's totally reasonable.
And I think he got stuck in this spot where he was calling as a compromise and felt like, I'm too close to the money to get 18 big blinds in here. And I think, just like we've talked about, you're not that close to the money, in fact. And calling just doesn't, people think, I'll lower my variance by calling. And that's not really true. In a lot of cases, you're actually upping your variance by calling. If you just put it in pre-flop and see how the cards run out, it's a little counterintuitive, but you're going to get, it's a lower variance route when everybody else folds at a high frequency.
The other thing that I was thinking about that is that when you've got 18 big blinds, like he made a point of this just goes back to to pushing pre-flop, but like his opponent is risking a lot more than it may, like he's risking his tournament life. That's for sure. The biggest thing that you can risk, right? But like his opponent would be taking on a very large risk for what could be a pot that's not even that big, right? So his opponent would be risking half of his chip stack at a point in the tournament when you need every bit, So there's his opponent has the same sort of like bubble mentality at the same, as we do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the 18 blind chip stack is perfect size for the steal. So after someone raises, 3-betting and stealing, it's the perfect chip stack for that.
Yeah.
So that's why the pre-flop shove against the raise is excellent.
Yep. I like it. So, Jacob, thanks for writing in. I hope you found some fun in the answers there. And I want to thank Woody Adams, John Somsky, Website Amp, Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack and Casino, the one and only Steve Frudland, and all our listeners. Talk to you again soon, folks.